is Notsam Wrestling.
Introducing your host from New York, here is Sam Roberts.
We are backstage at the Hammerstein Ballroom with a man who I was thinking about it today. I can't believe it's taken this long to be on the podcast. Like this is, especially you, of all people, it's mind-blowing that you have not been on the podcast yet.
Whose fault is that?
Mine. I was like, I'm going to ask him why he hasn't done the podcast. And I was like, well, the appropriate response is, invite me to.
Right.
Ladies and gentlemen, Jay Lethal is here.
Thank you.
What's going on, man? What's the haps?
Oh, I'm just trying to stay warm.
Yeah.
Like I mentioned to you before we started rolling, I am a Tampa guy. Although I was born in New Jersey, so you'd think I'd be used to it. But something about living in Florida does something. It must have thinned my blood, or it changed me somehow. And now, as soon as it gets cold, I turn into a little baby. I'm like, it's freezing here. Can't we get a warmer building? But it's actually not that cold in here. It's just outside.
No. Yeah, we were literally just outside, and so for me, I'm like, this is great. This is tropical in here. But the reason why I say, like, I can't believe of all people, you haven't been on the show is because I've known you for so long.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you were one of the guys who, when I first started doing stuff in Jersey All Pro Wrestling, you were the guy in Jersey All Pro Wrestling, and you've been the guy. They're calling your name. They're calling your name.
That's not just anybody. That's Cody Rhodes. I know it. It sounds like him. Oh, I think they're being told, hey, be quiet.
Well, either that or he just doesn't have the guts to interrupt an interview that's as serious as this. No, you don't. But the question was, right, when you're all that was probably what, over 10 years ago, 12 years ago maybe?
At least maybe 15,
Man,
13,
yeah.
14, 15.
Yeah.
Because now I'm 33, and I started in 2001, so I'm pretty much been wrestling more than half my life now.
It's amazing because you start so young that at 33 you're like a grizzled vet. Isn't that amazing?
I don't think I'm grizzled. I definitely don't like to think of myself as a vet either. I like a lot of guys are like, whenever I do interviews, are like, oh, how do you feel about being like the vet in the locker room or the leader of the locker room? I don't like to think of myself like that. I don't like to think of myself as the leader of anything, especially since here at Ring of Honor, everybody who goes out through that curtain, they all got one main goal in mind in the front. There's another goal in there is to get over, but the main goal in the front of their minds for all of us is to make Ring of Honor as big as we possibly can with our actions while we're out there. We want to put on a great match for the company. So to me, that kind of puts us all on the same level. But if you look at it from another standpoint, I have been wrestling longer than a lot of those guys. So I guess. But the years in the business doesn't make you a vet. I don't think that's what really.
I think experience does, and experience meaning not just the fact that you've been around, but you've done a lot. Like, even when you think about your Ring of Honor career, you've had so many different runs that have been significant that a lot of guys, like, you know, you would think for some people, the House of Truth is their run, right? That could have been your run.
Right. No, the funny part about that is you mentioned, you know, I've been in Ring of Honor for a while. That first stint when I was in Ring of Honor, I was a part of Special K. I don't know if you remember that. I had only been wrestling for about 2 years, okay? I legit felt like someone messed up and allowed me to be here. Think about wrestling for only 2 years and you're having matches with Samoa Joe and CM Punk and Bryan Danielson. I really felt like, do they not know that I have just only been wrestling for 2 years? Somebody messed up. Someone made a mistake. So needless to say, I make a joke of it, but I really felt like I didn't belong here. I felt like I didn't have enough experiences. I always had to ask, what are we doing, or what's next, or what should I do? Luckily, the guys in the locker room were super friendly. Joe would always be there to help me. Yeah, do this, got to do that. But I really didn't feel like I belonged here when I was they welcomed me, but I was missing something, and I knew it.
Right. And looking back on that now, were you like, yeah, I was right to feel that way?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I wish there was some kind of time machine where I could take me now and put me back take me back and put me in this, because I would have knocked it out of the park, man. I just, but of course, it's like you go back into the past with the winning lottery numbers. Anybody will
Right.
do.
But,
Yeah,
that Powerball that was $100 million. Like, I wish I had a time machine.
Right. But yeah, I felt like I did not belong there. And looking back on it now, knowing what I know now, I definitely had no business in Ring of Honor. But I'm glad I was there back then. I'm glad the guys just treated me so. I mean, I don't have a single bad thing to say about anybody that was on the roster at that time. And Samoa Joe he's the number one person. He really looked after me. A lot of people think it was just the gimmick or the storyline angle where was like his young boy and I came to the ring with him, but that was real, which is how it really started. Gabe was like, oh yeah, Joe, you'll go out with Joe and do this. But yeah, he really looked after me, and I would not have survived as long as I did in the company if it weren't for him.
Well, part of it, too, has to be, I think maybe part of the reason that you were well-liked when you were young by that group of guys is because you were self-aware enough to know, I don't think I belong here. And now knowing what you know now, you're like, I didn't.
Most
guys aren't that self-aware when they're that young.
That's true. Maybe if I had a different mindset, like, yeah, why didn't they ask me here sooner when I was only a year and a half in? I should be in the main event. Yeah, you know what? Maybe you're definitely right. Maybe something about that, thinking like that, did something on the outside. I exuded this humbleness, which is probably how I survived. Yeah. I think you might be onto something. I never looked at it that way.
Because that's an appealing thing to me. I like to be around people that not only have humility, but like are self-aware. Like, I don't even mind somebody with an ego if there's a reason for that ego. Right? If it's real, then it's like, yeah, they're right. They're right. But if they're wrong, and usually they're wrong. But when you're as young as you, whether it's your first Ring of Honor run or whether it's the days that we were talking about in Jersey All Pro, did you have kind of visions of what your career was going to look like, and did it look anything like it does now?
No. In fact, throughout my whole career, I've always been afraid to try and look too far into the future, or try and guess, or try and make a goal for myself, because I'd be too afraid that I'm going to jinx myself. Could you imagine getting into the wrestling business and going, yeah, I'm going to wrestle Ric Flair someday. No big deal. And then you do it. Yeah, I'm going to wrestle Kurt Angle live on pay-per-view. No big deal. Yeah. Then
what I do.
Right. So I was deathly afraid of setting any kind of goal or looking too far into the future. I liked playing it as it came, one day at a time, and it's worked out great for me. But although I really feel like my whole career can be described as someone who won the lottery.
You really think so?
I really do. I mean, when I think about everything that I've gotten to do, all the people that I gotten to work with, that I sat at home when I was younger with my brothers watching them on television, and then I got to work with them on television while my brothers watched at home. I got to do some things that people only dream of in the wrestling business. I'm the face of a company known around the world for its wrestling, not only once, but twice. This is my second time.
Yeah.
And think about getting a promotion twice.
Right.
Because winning the belt is like getting a promotion. It's getting that corner office that you always wanted. The company that you work for says this guy has what it takes. It's time to reward him, and they reward you. And then you've got to think about this now. You did such a good job. We're going to reward you again. It's like getting another promotion.
Right.
Ric Flair had 16, 17 promotions. But it shows. Because when you're younger, winning that belt means something different. When you're just watching it as a fan, it means like, oh, he's the number one guy. He's the badass. Like, I want to be like that guy. But then when you get into wrestling, you realize it's something totally different. Sure, it means you're good at your craft, but inside and outside of the ring, the company has to put trust and faith in you. So it's a high honor to become a champion.
So does that goal of becoming champion change in the sense that when you first start wrestling and you're going to wrestling school and blah, 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 you still have that fan fan mentality.
Of course, I did.
Right.
I did, yeah.
Right. And I think that that's normal, where you want to be champion because you like the champion when you were a kid and you want to be the man.
Right, and that meant that you were the best.
Right,
You know
exactly.
what I mean? Right,
exactly.
Right.
So how far into it,
I knew you were going to ask it.
how
I
far
don't
into
know.
it does the goal shift where you're like,
oh, man. I
wanna-
can't pinpoint exactly when it was, but I'm sure for me it happened very quickly, especially since 2 years in, I felt like I didn't belong because I didn't feel like I had enough experience first. So for me,
You figured it out.
I think I figured it out pretty quick.
yeah. I mean, that seems like,
I think I figured it out when there was a student, my very first student show that I had. The promoter, I didn't get picked to have a match in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Later on, I got added, and when I didn't get picked, I think that was a little humbling experience there
Right.
too. Like, oh, okay, so it's. I mean, okay, this might work a little differently.
I got to figure out how to deal with this right now.
Right.
So,
But I did get picked, and I did have a match that day. So.
but you were ready not to.
I was ready not to. Right?
That's what, I think that, when people talk about, you can come back behind us. No, we are
We're
filming, but
filming, yeah.
we told them we're backstage at the Hammerstein. I mean, this stuff happens.
Yeah, they understand.
But I think people talk about, when they talk about your qualities, right, they obviously bring up everything you do in the ring and how good you are there. I think your run in TNA started to really, have people click into the charisma and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that the stuff that we're talking about right now, your ability from the beginning or from a young age to click into what the wrestling business is and to get out of that sort of fan space and into this is my career and I can figure out what the perspective is now.
Yeah.
I think that that's a step that a lot of guys either take longer to get to or sometimes don't, and I don't think you can succeed without that part of it.
Because there's no one to hold your hand and teach you that part. That's
Right.
got to be like something that happens on your own, right?
Right. And that's what happens to those guys that instead of kind of being self-aware and sitting back and observing, they walk in with the ego like they know everything. They never learn anything, right?
You're right.
So you were going to say something, though, when I talked about TNA being the place where people kind of clicked into your innate charisma.
I was going to say that now up until the point where I got to TNA, Impact Wrestling, there's no other way to explain this. I like to think that if you said, oh, what kind of wrestler is Jay Lethal? Like, what is he all about? What's his gimmick? What do you think his gimmick is? Up until that point, I would have said, as a fan, taking myself out of the equation, just watching as a fan, I would have said, what is his gimmick? He's just some black kid who likes wrestling. He wants to wrestle. Like, he trained to be a wrestler. That's it. There's nothing, It wasn't until I got to Impact Wrestling and got into that character, the Black Machismo, that's when I really started realizing. Maybe I realized it, but I never had a chance to do it. But there was more to wrestling.
Yeah, because last name's Lethal.
Right.
It's very, very dangerous. That's the whole deal.
What else do I need?
Yeah, I mean.
Right. I got the name. That's it. I'm a badass.
Yeah, I mean, clearly.
But yeah,
I win my matches. That's the gimmick.
I had to learn to find out how many layers there was to me. That Machismo character really, it like cracked the shell that I was in, opened it up, and I had no choice but to let this flower inside bloom. What a weird thing.
Good.
Like I bloomed like a flower. You
bloomed all over Black Machismo.
But yeah, that really forced me to like break out of my shell and show some personality, and I was just starting to master that, or I felt like I was, and then that character ended, and then I went into the Ric Flair thing, and then I learned about promos, and that whole time getting to work alongside Kevin Nash, and also Samoa Joe was still there, who kind of always had me under his wing. I was learning a lot about how to carry yourself inside the ring and outside of the ring. I learned a lot from Kevin Nash about how to let people talk to you and how you should talk to them, depending on what position they're in. So he taught me politics, brother. He was, but yeah, it was, man, what a learning
That seems
experience.
like, based on the stories everybody tells, Kevin Nash is the guy to teach a master class in wrestling politics.
He'll tell you that, right. I remember he's the funniest guy I know. One of the first things that he had mentioned to us as a group was, he goes, You know, it's cool that we're sitting around here talking and have a good time, but if this were WCW back in the day, you guys would hate my guts. So, like, he knows and he realizes it. But, yeah, that whole – I can only think back and say what a dream situation someone who had only been wrestling for about 2.5, almost 3 years to be in Impact Wrestling for me at that time. It was the ultimate. I couldn't have paid money out of my pocket for a better learning experience, a better 7-year learning experience than the one that I got. I got to learn from the best, the ins and outs of professional wrestling, which ultimately prepared me for my second run here in Ring of Honor, where I would be the front runner, the world champion, the face of a company, and I've got all the tools now that I need. It's almost like it prepared me and gave me all the tools I would need for this point in time. So it's cool when I think back, like, man, it's like almost everything happens for a reason. Like this was supposed to happen. I was supposed to get all that experience in, so I had to be ready for this point. And now, speaking of this point here, because I do feel like we're going into not a new era, but a new phase in Ring of Honor. There's a lot of rumors about who's sticking around, who's leaving. I'm not afraid to talk about that. It's just no secret anymore. They don't make a secret about it. But what a time to be the world champion going into 2019 in this moment where it feels like Ring of Honor not only is not going to have to reinvent themselves, but we're going to have to do something special here. Because this might be like a new phase in Ring of Honor.
I mean, that's when I talk about Ring of Honor, pretty much all the last year, I'm like, look, Ring of Honor is on fire right now, but at the same time, they have to look at what happened when WCW was on fire and the NWO was there. I'm like, in my mind, you can't make this the Bullet Club show. You have to make it a promotion.
Right.
Now, the Elite is there, but it's not their show, and that's your kind of role, right?
Right. Here's another thing. I don't think Ring of Honor purposely made some of the shows into the Bullet Club show. You know what I mean? Although it did kind of seem like that on the surface for some of the shows, but I just think that those guys had so much star power and they were so quote-unquote over that no matter where you put them on the show, they were going to, I hate use the word usurp, but they were going to become the focal point of the show anyway because of how over they were.
Right.
So by default, no matter where you put them on the show, it's
going to happen.
Right. Especially there's so many of them, and they're not all in just one match. They're all spread out throughout the show.
Right.
So that was a tough thing to overcome for Ring of Honor. So thinking about this new phase that Ring of Honor is going into, I think some people could potentially be worried, but I'm not too worried, and here's why. I think that Ring of Honor has always done a great job in surviving, picking up and surviving. Can you imagine having a wrestling company with guys like Samoa Joe, CM Punk, AJ Styles, Bryan Danielson, Nigel McGuinness, you putting on fantastic shows? Now put a year in between, but think about 1 year after another, people leaving. How do you pick up and carry on after you've lost an AJ Styles? How do you pick up and carry on after you lost in the same month Nigel and Bryan Danielson?
Right.
How do you pick up and move on after losing a Samoa Joe, a Roderick Strong, the heart and soul of Ring of Honor, losing an Adam Cole, an Austin Aries? Ring of Honor has always been able to do it, and I think the winning formula is you don't look for replacements because these guys are irreplaceable. You don't go out and say, who can I get to replace them? You just continue to put on the best wrestling you possibly can while looking for other great talent out there to add on to your list, not fill in that gap that is now missing because some of these guys have left a hole in shoes that no one can fill. Who can fill the shoes of Bryan Danielson?
Right.
You can't. You just have to appreciate and respect and accept the fact that he did what he did for this company while he was here, and now he's elsewhere. His legacy will live on in the foundation of this company, but the company isn't defined just by one person. It's a collective group of all of our hard work. So I'm not really worried. It's cool to say I'm the champion going into this, what feels like a new phase, but I'm not worried at all.
I think if you look at the big names that have come into WWE over the years, if anything, it goes to the point of Ring of Honor's ability to adapt and overcome. And you look at, like you said, I mean, look at the names. Every name you just mentioned, including Nigel McGuinness. like they're all there. But you go down the generations of Ring of Honor, and that's where everybody's coming from. You look at the guys that are main eventing NXT right now, and it's the Adam Coles and Roderick Strongs and Kyle O'Reillys and Bobby Fishes. You look at the guys that are just starting in NXT right now, and it's Punishment Martinez, and it's Donovan, and it's and so you wouldn't have. I mean, Tyler Black could main event WrestleMania this year.
Exactly.
You don't have generations of talent coming out of any other promotion.
It's unreal. Back in the day when Kerry Silken ran the company, when CM Punk, Bryan Danielson, when Samoa Joe left, if it were me, I would put, okay, guys, we're done. I'm sorry. Yeah. Everybody else here, you guys are fantastic, but, like, what am I supposed to do here? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh, man, but Kerry saw... That was a cool part about when Kerry was here, too. Nothing up against Sinclair. This is a great company, but back in the day, Kerry really saw what each wrestler could do, and he put so much faith in each of us. It was such a cool little niche thing to be a part of.
So is that motivation, like when you go into a match like you're going to have tonight with Cody,
yeah.
Are you sitting there going, clearly I want to have, every match I go into, I want to have the best match I've ever had, but tonight, with all the talk about what's Cody doing starting next month, is this his last match in Ring of Honor? Is he going to show up in WWE? Is he going to start his own promotion? Is he going to do whatever? Do you feel like it's your job to go out there and not only have the best match that you could possibly have, but put out a performance that lets the audience know, regardless of what Cody does, we're in good hands?
I do. And the crazy part is, and I don't have the wrist tape and I'm not going to write the letters, but I always like to think back, because to me, there's nothing like the legends that have helped build this company, okay? So I always think back to, like, man, so I'm in the main event with Cody. This guy could be leaving soon, which also means that who knows how the crowd's going to be reacting. Is it going to be a rah-rah moment? Are they going to be sad he's gone? Am I going to be looked down upon because I'm the company guy?
Right.
And it's almost like, he's against me here. So I like to think a lot of times, what would Samoa Joe do in this position? What would AJ Styles and Bryan Danielson do here? They'd almost hit the F-bomb there. They'd go out there and do what they normally do. They'd knock it out of the park. It's business as usual. And that's what kind of keeps me centered and like, I'm going to go out there and do what I always do. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, and I mean, and it's the ideal, it could be, depending on your perspective, the ideal situation for somebody who's ready for that situation. You know what I mean? It's like perfect for proving ground.
Right. And situations like this, they really test a professional wrestler. I feel like being the Ring of Honor World Champion, and not only has prepared me for this, but that's a test to hold that belt. Can you think about being the Ring of Honor World Champion and have to go into the main event? You're at the end of the show after they have already seen the Young Bucks. They've already seen Adam Cole. They've seen the greatest wrestlers in the world, and then you have to go on and follow that. That's what kind of situation.
You're the champion, right?
Right. That's every day.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah.
So I do admit that it's a very stressful situation, but it really makes a wrestler excel. When the pressure's put on, you find out if a wrestler's going to sink or swim, and sometimes that pressure is what you need to help boost you and dig down deep and brings out something that you didn't know you had before,
Let me go back to Black Machismo for a second.
All right.
You do, the Black Machismo is crazy. It morphs into this Ric Flair character that nobody knew you could do a Ric Flair impression, and you whip that out. I've seen you, I think it was PWS, when Psycho Sid didn't show up. I was at the show. I might have been doing commentary on the show. Come out and do this. So Psycho Sid didn't show up. So you come out with the vest on as Sid. Obviously, you don't know you're going to do this because you don't know he's not showing up until the day of.
Right.
But you whip out this nuanced, this nuanced impression where I'm like, oh, Sid does do that stuff. And you don't even, like, the fist bumps in the crowd. And, who's the man? Do you just do everybody?
I don't. Or at least I don't know that I can. So here's the funny thing about that Sid thing. I didn't know that I was going to do that until So let's say if you put a timer on as soon as I walk through the curtain, rewind the timer 6-7 minutes back. That's when I realized that I was going to do that. I'm not even exaggerating either. About 6-7 minutes before I walked through that curtain is when I decided, and we said, "Oh, let's do this. It'll be funny." And then I had to quickly. I found a vest. There was a wrestler. He had a vest on.
I guess black leather vest in a wrestling locker room is attainable.
Oh yeah. What's one thing you can find in any locker room? So I quickly tried to think, and I'm big on little tiny details.
Yeah.
So I think that's what makes me good at doing impressions, because I'm real big on little tiny details. One of the coolest parts about that impression to me is every time Sid would come out through the curtain, it looked like someone just poured 2 gallons of water on him, or he had just gotten out of the shower before he would walk. He was dripping with water or whatever liquid was on him. So that was probably my favorite part. I just stood underneath the sink in the bathroom, just got as wet as I possibly can. And here's why. Because sometimes when he just walked down, he'd snap his head and look at a fan. And when he would do that, I had this image of watching him walk down the aisle, snapping his head, and you'd see the water flying when he would turn his head to give somebody the pound. So I knew that that had to happen. I'm just big on details. So I didn't even know I had a good Sid impression. And to my standards, I don't even think it was that good.
It was pretty good.
Thank you.
So as a kid, are you just watching these tapes over and over again, or are you just a guy from the time you're young that when you watch something, you just click into these details and they don't leave you?
No, over and over again.
Yeah.
I think I clicked into the details right away, but I watched wrestling religiously over and over and over again. And then there was a time where we didn't have cable, so I was forced to watch tapes and VHSs. So I just
Would you just go to Blockbuster and just rent the pay-per-views?
And my buddies recorded the pay-per-views, because with the VHS, you had to stick a little piece of paper or something inside that little square
Scotch tape.
So
you put it right over the. I was a tape trader, man. I know all the tricks.
I can't believe I never thought to put Scotch tape over.
Yes.
I would just wedge a piece of paper towel in there.
No.
So that you could
Clear Scotch tape. You put it on flat. It's smooth. It's like that little tab.
Wow, that just took me back. That's awesome. So yeah, a lot of tape trading with my buddies. They taped the pay-per-view, let me watch it. But yeah, I watched wrestling 24/7, and that's I think that helped me pick up on so many little details.
Yeah,
and I didn't even realize I was picking up on them. Probably
right.
They're in there now.
Right now, are you doing Macho Man and Ric Flair and stuff in locker rooms, and people are like,
just Macho Man.
Okay,
He was the only impression that I knew I could do, and whenever it was like a quiet time in the locker room, I would just bust out a savage or any little savageism that I could do. He was the only impression that I knew I could do. I think I have a good Jimmy Hart, but I need a megaphone to do it. But yeah, and then the Ric Flair impression, I didn't know I could do that until I got drunk, which is that funny story.
Which is when you should do a Ric Flair impression.
Why would you do one when you're not drunk?
Yeah, that's the.
We went to the UK, and on one of the off days, everybody was in the bar drinking. I had a few too many. And then when I got back on the bus the next morning, everyone's like walking like zombies. We're tired. And everyone's like, wooing to me. Like, Earl Hebner's like, go ahead, do it like you were doing last night. And meanwhile, I have no idea what the hell he's talking about. So, yeah, that's how I found out I could do a Ric Flair impression.
I feel like your Ric Flair, too, is not like a lot of people do a Ric Flair that's like, my shoes cost more than your house Ric Flair. I feel like your Ric Flair is very, like, and it's probably because we're around the same age. It's that late nitros, fire me, I'm already fired.
Yeah.
Ric Flair, like that's your Ric.
Oh yeah. So I watched so much of him too. I remember having 5 Best of the Horsemen DVDs that I had gotten from an indie show.
Of course.
Because during the tape tradings and.
You get the 5 DVDs and 3 of them have all the same matches.
Right. I really feel like just watching so much wrestling is what's helped me in wrestling.
Yeah.
And I really think some people underestimate how much just watching wrestling can help you as a professional wrestler.
I'm sure. Well, as a fan, is having the match with Ric Flair or having that promo woo-off where you're both doing him? And like Ric Flair's getting you've got Ric Flair to the point where he himself is doing an impression of your impression of him.
Right.
Like, what is more your moment in your head when you think back and be like,
I think
like 12-year-old Jay Lethal would be losing his mind.
The moment is definitely wrestling him on pay-per-view, thinking about sitting in the living room watching a WWF pay-per-view with my brothers. And sometimes my sister would come in, but watching it on the couch in the living room, watching Ric Flair, and then fast forward that I'm watching Ric Flair, and in that same living room, my family has gathered, that same exact living room, and my same brothers and sisters that I watched with them on TV, they're now watching me wrestle Ric Flair, and it was just a surreal moment when I thought of it like that. So that's probably it, and probably also because the other moment you talked about, that woo-off, scariest moment of my life.
Why?
Well, so being in Impact Wrestling, they had never given me a chance to cut a live promo. So I'd never had a chance to have a live microphone in my hand in front of a live crowd, live TV. Most of the stuff we did was taped anyway.
Of course.
All my promos were taped in the locker room, and I rarely had to do more than one take, because even if I didn't say the right word, I was talking like Savage, so that was good enough. Right. You know what I mean? So now, this is the first time, live crowd, live microphone, and I got to go with this guy, the greatest promo guy in the world. I was terrified the entire time. Any interaction, microphone stuff you see me do with Ric Flair, just know that in the back of my head, I was terrified.
But that's when the pressure brings out the best in you.
That's true. That is true. I had no choice but to excel, but terrified. I remember thinking, before I walked through the curtain, my hands started to cramp up because I was so nervous. And Simon Diamond, he's the only one who was like, he came up to me I'm standing right before I go through the curtain, pacing, like, oh man, I must have looked scared out of my mind. And he came up to me, he goes, "What's the matter? What's the problem? What are you doing?" I go, "Oh, man, I don't even know what they want me to do." Because we'll pause the story there. Another thing was Flair wouldn't let them write anything for him, so therefore I didn't know what I was going to say because he didn't know what he was going to say. So I just had to go out there and wing it, like he was. So that's another reason why I was terrified. So Simon Diamond's coming up to me, he's like, "What's wrong? Like, you're about to go out there, this is gonna be fine." I'm like, I don't know. I don't even know what they want me to do. Or say, like, he won't write. They can't write anything for him. I'm not even that good at promos, Pat. And he's like, "But you don't get it." He goes, "You have been put in this situation because they know you can do it. Okay, you do this awesome impression in the locker room with us. Just go out there and do that. Pretend like you're in the locker room with us. Because that's why you're in this position now, because of what you've been doing in the locker room with us." So that, when I thought about it like that, I go, that kind of helps a little bit. Yeah. But I'm still scared out of my mind. But I did appreciate him coming up to me and trying to calm me down and say that, because he was right. I was in that position because of something that I had been doing in the locker room that they appreciated and they liked.
What was it like, not only bringing back the Machismo character for All In September, but getting to come out with his brother in original Macho Man gear? I was sitting there, I was watching it with Pat Buck. You know Pat Buck, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So we're watching it, and I'm like, "Pat, that's original gear." You could tell, like, it did. And Pat's like, "Oh my God, he's wearing original Macho Man gear."
When Lanny showed me that jacket, I almost lost my mind.
Yeah.
And you know the crazy part about All In, I knew I was doing the Machismo thing, and I haven't told many people this, but deep down inside, I thought to myself, I don't care if anybody likes what I'm about to do right now. So I didn't really want anyone to go, "He's a Ring of Honor World Champion. What the hell is he doing?" At that moment, all I could think of was, I am the inner child in me who loved the Macho Man is going crazy right now. I don't give a damn about what anybody else thinks. I don't care if I go through that curtain and they boo. I don't care. I'm wearing Savage's jacket right now. His brother is coming out with me to Macho Man, that pomp and circumstance music. I'm in heaven. I'm not even going to pay attention to the crowd. So that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
But when that music hit, the crowd went insane.
Yeah.
And that that's probably one of the greatest moments of my life, because right then I realized two things. Either they're going crazy because they appreciate what I have done or been doing with this machismo thing, or they love Savage as much as I do. Either way, I'm fine with it, whatever.
Right.
But that place went, man, I was not expecting that. The second note hit in the Pomp and Circumstance music, they went wild, and it did something inside to me, man. That was one of the greatest nights of my life.
No, I get that, because that's easy to be cynical about. Like, it's easy to say, like, well, come on, that's a goof character, and he is the Ring of Honor champion. But I think there's something about, like, even a character like that is, essentially based in comedy. Like, when you do it at a level that's that high, and, like, an audience is going to sit there and go, number one, we love the character, and number two, it couldn't be done better. Like,
right.
Then I think that at that point, you don't have anything to be upset about, especially when you can read all over your face that you're having the time of your life.
And here's another thing. I had the dubious task. Every match on that card could have been a main event on any show around the world.
Yes.
And I knew that. I knew going in everybody on the card would be trying to outdo the match before it or the match right after it. Everybody's trying to have the greatest match in their life. So what could I do different other than try to out-wrestle some of the other guys on the show? Something that only I could bring to the table that they couldn't.
Right.
So that's another reason that I decided maybe the Machismo character is the way to go, because could you imagine trying to have a better match than all the matches that were there? How do you have a better match than the Young Bucks? How do you have a better match than Kenny Omega? Like, it's very tough to do. So I just tried to bring something to the table that I knew that those guys couldn't.
And it allowed you to have a moment.
Right.
Like, it's a moment, and we're talking about it now.
Right.
So, obviously we said you got Cody tonight.
Uh-huh.
But theoretically, beginning of April,
oh,
there's a big show coming up.
Okay, so April is my birthday, by the way.
Oh, my
So it's an
gosh.
early birthday present. I'm going to get to wrestle in Madison Square Garden. Hopefully, I'll be the Ring of Honor World Champion by then. Now, I like to make this joke that most of the people from our generation who got into wrestling, well, you're not a wrestler, but for most of the people that I know that are wrestlers who got into the wrestling business during my generation, we thought that the only way to work at Madison Square Garden, there was only two ways.
Two.
Yeah, two. One, you had to work for WWE or WWF. The other, you had to fill out an application to work at Madison Square Garden as a janitor or a vendor or something.
Sell popcorn.
Popcorn.
Yeah.
I am going to get to wrestle in Madison Square Garden without doing any of those two things, which is incredible. And not only is it proof that Ring of Honor is doing something special with this venture with New Japan, it proves that the wrestling business as a whole is doing amazing. It's this boom period that has allowed these walls to come down. Things that were never possible before are now possible because, and I accredit most of it to the internet and the streaming capability, a kid who liked WWF and only knew WWF now just has to click a button and he can watch Ring of Honor, PWG, Rev Pro in the UK. It's really helped the wrestling business, and because the wrestling business is thriving, it's really helped us. So I'm about to get to wrestle in Madison Square Garden.
Yeah, have you thought about what you might want to do there, or is this a thing where every so often you just sit there at night before you fall asleep and go, oh my God, I'm going to Madison Square Garden?
I'm afraid to think about too far into the future, but I there are some people in my head that I would like to wrestle. I know that Okada's going to be there because he was on the poster. Him and Marty are on the poster. I want to be on the poster.
Yeah.
I would love to be on the poster.
You got the gold.
I'd love to wrestle Okada in a singles. Also, someone else, I'd love to wrestle Jay Briscoe at Madison Square Garden. I think out of all the people I've ever been in the ring with, knowing that I got to wrestle my idol, Ric Flair and Kurt Angle, out of all the people I've been in the ring with, the person who has pushed me the most is Jay Briscoe. I really had to dig down deep every time I step into the ring with him. And I feel like that's what I need and want at a show like a Madison Square Garden. And I feel like I'd have to do that too if I wrestled Okada, because he's Okada. Like, you got to.
Of course.
So I whatever my match is, I need the pressure to be on me.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and I mean, there's so much potential. Like, it's almost hard not to have a dream match, right? Because just the fact that it's you and it's that title and it's in Madison Square Garden, it's almost whoever the opponent is, it's a dream match.
Right.
But now you really can think of dream matches, right? Is it because you and Jay Briscoe with the Ring of Honor title there in Madison Square Garden
would be incredible.
Incredible. Oh God, incredible. Like it's very, very difficult to go wrong. So it seems like you're looking into 2019 extremely enthusiastically.
I am. And like I said, the biggest takeaway from here during our interview I'd like the people to realize is Ring of Honor, although some people may have different opinion, I don't think we're in trouble because some people are leaving. It's business as usual. Ring of Honor's always picked up and carried on. If you need proof, just look back and see all the people that they've lost, and look at the things that they've been able to do after those people were gone. And we appreciate everything every wrestler has ever done for this company while they've been here. And if they're no longer here, we thank you. But moving forward, I don't think Ring of Honor is going to be in any trouble. I think the future is bright. We're going to Madison Square Garden in a few months. I think everything's going to be okay.
When you look out into that locker room and you're sitting on your pedestal that the locker room leader gets to sit upon over everybody else, the Mount Olympus of the locker room, and you're looking down upon.
There's a throne back there they have.
I've only heard, but that's what I believe. I read it, and I believe that that's true.
It's in the bathroom.
That's right. But when you look at the locker room, is there any... Other than yourself, are there any names or people specifically that you see that go, that guy right there, that's a reason why we won't be in trouble. That guy's a reason why we won't be in trouble.
The entire locker room.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a cliche answer, of course, and like, oh, you can't give me one name. But no, I picked the entire locker room, and all because our main goal, all of us, whenever we go through that curtain, we all want to get over, like I mentioned, but our main goal is to make the Ring of Honor as big as we possibly can make it. So if you're going out there with that goal in your head, then you're one of the reasons why Ring of Honor is going to be fine. You know what I mean?
Well, I feel like
it's all of us. I feel like everyone's got that thought.
I feel like we've bookended this beautifully.
Yeah.
And the furniture's going up.
Yeah,
so that
I
really
think they're trying to give us the sign.
Yeah, that's right. I can't wait to watch the match tonight, man.
Thank you
I'm
very
so glad
much.
we finally got to do this.
Thanks for having
and
me.
let's do it again, man.
I hope so. Little Mega Powers ending here. Something's going to happen. He said that too. Something's going to happen. Awesome.
Thanks, man.
Thank you.